Birding in May is exciting. We transition from yellow-headed blackbirds and waterfowl to putting out oranges and waiting for orioles to arrive. You will see that we have spent a lot of time carefully watching the hummingbird feeder on my deck. You will not want to miss these pictures about halfway through this video. We've also made a few journeys into the woods and prairie to mark the arrival of warblers, sparrows, and many songbirds of summer. It's very easy to note 60 different species in a couple-hour walk this time of year. May 4th, we had just such a goal. We started by photographing a sandhill crane and several shorebirds at a flooded field. We watched the greater yellowlegs, which is often referred to as a marsh piper because it can wade deeper into water than other shorebirds. I only see these birds in late April or early May as they migrate to their breeding grounds in Canada. They like to show off those yellow legs with their high-stepping gait. The white-crowned sparrow is a winter bird across much of the United States, but not Minnesota. Occasionally these birds will overwinter in the Twin Cities and come to feeders for sunflowers and other seeds. We usually see them in the spring as they pass through on their way to breed in northern Canada. Having a brush pile in your yard is a good way to attract them. The white-throated sparrow, which also visits feeders, has already been here for a few weeks and seems to be more common. Unlike the white-crowned sparrow, they breed in northern Minnesota. The white-throated has yellow near their eyes and a sadder song. I was surprised to already see goslings swimming this early in May. Canada geese can lay 5 eggs per year on average. They are incubated for about a month. This pair obviously only hatched 2. The internet says the most they can lay is 9, so what is this couple doing with 25 babies? Parents take their goslings to the water to feed almost immediately after birth. The day after the goslings hatch, the parents take them to a brooding area where they are raised with other families in a group called a creche. These gang broods can have as many as 100 goslings. Penguins do this as well. It's basically a nursery. Because there are more parents to keep watch, this gives the babies a better chance of survival. Swan eggs should be hatching soon as well. Most people consider brown-headed cowbirds a nuisance because they don't build their own nest. Females will lay as many as 3 dozen eggs a summer in the nests of other birds. Since these eggs hatch quicker and develop quicker, they can often destroy the other eggs in the nest. The Harris sparrow is another bird that you have to catch during migration. It winters in the southern Great Plains and breeds in way northern Canada. They aren't shy and are willing to forage out in the open. They are larger than most sparrows, and the adults have a black face and pink bill. They will visit feeders. At first glance, all of the flycatchers look pretty similar, except the scissortail and the vermilion, but we don't have either of those. The least flycatcher showed up before all the other lookalikes. They have a little more bold eye ring. Usually you have to listen for their call. They all have high, quick, 2-syllable calls. The least says chipek, the willow says fitzpew, and the alder says free beer. In late April and early May, if I see a warbler, I usually guess yellow-rumped. I don't usually bother with a photo as they are so incredibly common. Catbirds have an incredibly jumbled song. Vireos have a more persistent, annoying call. The first vireo we saw in Minnesota this year was the warbling vireo. They look very similar to the Philadelphia vireo. You can remember the other three common vireos by a color and a body part: red-eyed, yellow-throated, and blue-headed. We have since seen all of these. The Hummingbird is a tiny warbler with a huge voice. It sounds like it's calling, "Teacher, teacher, teacher." It's one of the many birds with a white eye ring. Kinda looks like it has a mohawk with its orange central stripe with black on either side. Black and white warblers crawl along tree trunks like a nuthatch. They have an extra long hind claw compared to other warblers, which helps them cling to bark as they probe for insects. They are also much more combative than other warblers and will often fight with redstarts. While the name palm warbler makes you think it's a tropical bird, it's actually one of the northernmost breeding of all warblers. They arrived before other warblers and have almost completely moved through on their way to northern Canada. They do not behave like a normal warbler. They spend their time on the ground with sparrows and juncos. You can identify them by their rusty cap and the way they wag their tail up and down as they walk. Rose-breasted grosbeaks show up at the beginning of May. Males like to get right on the tip of a high tree branch and sing. They sing most of the day and will even sing on moonlit nights, so it makes them easy to locate. Their nests are one of the most commonly parasited by the brown-headed cowbird. This is probably because they sing while building the nest. Males take turns incubating, and they even sing while doing this. The orange-crowned warbler is another misnamed warbler, as I don't think I've ever seen an orange crown. They are pretty much a nondescript olive-colored warbler. The yellow warbler is much easier to identify, and I see and hear them all the time. In addition to being brilliant yellow, the males have red streaks on their chest. Of the over 200 birds whose nests the brown-headed cowbird parasites, the yellow warbler is one of the few who is aware of the foreign egg. They are not large enough to kick the egg out, so they'll simply bury the egg by building a new nest on top of the old one. We did record over 60 species of birds on May 4th. As you are now aware, we got lots of pictures, but we were still waiting for the Baltimore Orioles to start visiting our deck for oranges and grape jelly. They finally arrived on the evening of May 8th. We have enjoyed watching them every day since. I don't mind if house finches share the buffet, but it's really not for them. By the way, the female house finch has a plain gray face, unlike the bold, streaking patterns of the purple finch. May 8th also marked the arrival of the ruby-throated hummingbird. I wanted some good pictures, so I purchased a shutter remote so I could set up my camera on the tripod and take pictures from inside whenever he arrived. They feed every 12 minutes, so you don't have to be ready at all times. The Orioles are not nearly as predictable. I wanted to freeze the hummingbirds in flight as they approach the feeder. This requires a very high shutter speed because hummingbirds beat their wings on average 53 times a second. High shutter speeds mean you need lots of light. I put the camera in drive mode and shoot about 30 pictures during each approximately 15-second visit. I have the focus on AI servo, so it'll lock on the target as it moves. By using a remote, I've only been able to get a small percentage of the pictures in focus. It's great to get a close-up view because they are truly remarkable birds. They have extremely short legs that prevent them from walking. At best, they can shuffle on a perch, but most often they didn't even bother perching to drink. I mix 1/4 cup of sugar with 1 cup of water. No need to put food coloring in it. It needs to be changed every couple days to avoid fermenting. Somehow the hummingbirds know when you change the water because they are always really regular afterwards. While they are some of the tiniest birds, they are some of the biggest eaters. No animal has a higher metabolism. They can eat from 1 to 3 times their body weight in a single day. So what do they do when the weather is too cold or rainy for feeding? They go to a state called torpor. Their heart rate, which can be as high as 1,200 beats per minute, will drop to just 50, and their body temp can drop from its normal 102 degrees down into the 50s. They normally need to breathe about 250 times a minute, but in this sedated state, they barely need to breathe. They appear to be dead, but just vibrating their wings provides the heat needed to come out of torpor. They are excellent flyers, capable of traveling 500 miles non-stop during migration. Their wings literally hum. They are like oars attached to their shoulders, allowing them to fly backwards and sideways. We were able to get a few blurry shots with their tongue out, and even their tongue is fast. While feeding, they can lick up to 15 times per second. The real question is, why sugar is so good for them and bad for us? Maybe if we had that high of metabolism, we wouldn't have to worry about diabetes. After a few days, we were starting to get the photography technique down. The ruby throat is the only hummingbird found in the eastern United States. The feathers of its ruby throat actually contain no pigment, so they are only red by interference as sunlight bounces off the thin layers found there. It took a while to get a focused picture of its ruby throat. When it's not in sunlight, it just appears dark. Traveling to northern Minnesota the second weekend in May, we were surprised to find that most of the birds that had arrived in the cities the week earlier had already made their way north the 3-hour trip. The Nashville warbler has a gray face and a white eye ring. They like to teeter on the edge of branches searching for food. Like the Tennessee warbler, they are only found in Tennessee during migration. They can be found in northern Minnesota all summer long. Baltimore orioles have a distinctive chattery call unlike any other birds. When they're not eating oranges, they are high in trees looking in the leaves for insects. As you stare high up in the tree and listen, you'll be saying, "How can I not see this thing? It's bright orange." Cedar waxwings have a very high call, and they are here year-round. They eat a lot of fruit. They can occasionally become intoxicated from overripe berries that have fermented. A brown-headed cowbird raised in cedar waxwing nests seldom survives because it can't handle that much fruit. You can find the abundant savanna sparrow in grassy areas. You can pick up their insect-like song and look for the small head with yellow spots before the eye. Yet another bird with an eye ring. It almost seems not helpful at this point, but I believe the Swainson's thrush is the only thrush to have one. It gives a peeping call that could be mistaken for a frog. Back to the Harris sparrow. Lucas was able to get some great pictures while we were up north. Researchers noticed that older sparrows have larger black bibs, and they also tend to get the best access to food when foraging. They decided to rig the system by painting bibs on younger sparrows, and sure enough, they moved up in the pecking order the same way. Back at home, the red-bellied woodpecker had found our jelly and oranges. They aggressively slurped the jelly and peck at the oranges. They like to make a daily habit of knocking the oranges off the deck as well. We have not seen this, but apparently they've been known to drink from hummingbird feeders. They can actually stick their tongue out 2 inches beyond their bill. Their spit is sticky, so they can snatch prey from deep crevices. Speaking of crevices, like all woodpeckers, they are cavity nesters. They have been greatly impacted by the aggressive European starling. Apparently, as many as half their nests get invaded by starlings. I guess I'm glad I can help them out. The third weekend in May, we went out in search of the scarlet tanager. We heard one immediately upon getting out of the car. They sound like a robin with a sore throat. Later in the summer, you can often hear their chick-burr call. Occasionally, scarlet tanagers are orange instead of red. They are referred to as the orange variant scarlet tanager. In the fall and winter, they lose their scarlet feathers and molt into a greenish-yellow color. Speaking of orange, they do like oranges and grape jelly. I've seen them checking out these in the neighbor's yard. We were also looking for the grasshopper sparrow and spotted it immediately in the prairie grass. They are easy to find if you listen for their buzzing song and look for their gigantic beak. If they aren't singing, you won't find them because they prefer to run in the grass over flying. We also seen vesper sparrows, but I didn't get a photo. I did capture obligatory photos of more bluebirds, flickers, and wood ducks. Next, we spotted the orchard oriole, species number 255 for the year. They are the smallest oriole and much darker than the Baltimore. They are not found in northern Minnesota. They are a late arrival and they don't visit feeders. At first, I thought this female was a goldfinch, but it does not have the black wings like the female goldfinch, as you see in the next photo. Next, it was the lark sparrow. I don't really think they're supposed to be in Minnesota, but the crowhasson, with all its native prairie grass, is a hotspot for sparrows of all kinds. It's pretty easy to recognize them with their harlequin facial pattern. We also added our first photos of the year of the indigo bunting. This one was very blotchy, like it was still transitioning into its breeding plumage. I think we'll get better photos as we get closer to June. The lighting and the coloring were not impressive for this usually impressive bird. But when we returned to the car, the scarlet tanager was still hanging out, and it was still impressive. One last mention of the cowbird. Both male and female tanagers work hard to keep mother cowbird away from their nest. But when she finds an opportunity, she will knock a tanager egg out and lay her own. The tanagers are somehow unable to tell the difference and raise the cowbird as their own. This is sort of the opposite tale of the ugly duckling. The siblings all grow up to be beautiful, while the misfit grows up to be a cowbird. Birds have so much variety to observe, and there is never a better time to do it than the month of May.